Hey folks, John here again. Today's conversation is with Kiola Raines. She is a precision nutrition certified coach, say that 3 times fast, and also has a master's in exercise psychology. She was nice enough to sit down and talk about something that is really important to me, which is health and fitness in sobriety and recovery. It doesn't get talked about a lot, and we often use sugar and bad food as a crutch, definitely in early sobriety. We talked a little bit about that and how to take care of yourself then, and also to find longevity within your sobriety and your recovery by creating routines and better habits and really working on being a healthier person all around, not just not drinking. It was a great conversation. I had a lot of fun, and I hope that you enjoy it. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Kiola Raines. What's your first memory of alcohol? Maybe not your first drink, but how were you introduced to it in life? Maybe, through maybe it was your first drink, maybe it was parents or grandparents, that kind of thing. So what is your first memory of alcohol?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I would have to say probably when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, I remember being at like Christmas or Thanksgiving or some holiday at my grandparents' house. And my grandfather actually, when my dad moved out and, went off to college, they tore his room down and turned it into a bar, like a home bar. So they turned his closet. They just took the closet doors off, and that was like the back bar. And he just built a bar in front of it. So childhood, I knew that there was like something going on in there where like the adults were in there and we had to stay in the other room, and, everybody was laughing and being loud. So yeah, probably, somewhere around 8 or 9 years old is when I remember that there was alcohol around.
And then was it an issue in the house? Was it with parents? I know my father was an alcoholic, so it was definitely something that I experienced from an early age, but was it something that affected you as a child growing up?
Alcohol did it in a negative way. My dad is 25 years sober from cocaine and crack addiction. So he went to a whole different level. But it was like a fun thing, that's all I knew of it as a kid was like, my grandfather made drinks and, they had wine at the holidays, and in that household, at least, it wasn't an issue. And my parents didn't drink at all. So now looking back, I understand what was going on when I was a kid. With my dad, he was, going back and forth from recovery to relapsing and all these different things. So he was staying away from alcohol. That wasn't even his drug of choice anyways.
Right.
But it wasn't something that was in my house, but it was definitely around. And then like my mom's family, when we had family parties or holidays, everybody was drinking. My uncle is famous for his Long Island iced tea. And I was curious, like, why is everybody talking about this tea? Like what, and then as you get older, my first drink was I think like 14 or 15. So somewhere in high school. And I definitely remember that. But alcohol wasn't the issue in my household. It was more hard stuff.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that, or is that,
Yeah.
Okay.
So my whole experience with just substance abuse recovery it's evolving because we didn't really talk too much about it when I was a kid. So my dad, he realized that he was having an issue when I was probably maybe 4 years old, is when it was like, oh, okay, this is like, I can't just stop. Like everybody else, was doing, trying some coke. And then in the 80s, crack cocaine came out, and my parents just moved back to LA. And he always tells the story, his friend was taking him to go pick up one thing, and he heard this new thing was out, and his friend was like, no, like, Kevin, you don't want to try that. Like, that's not for you. And he was like, no, I want to try it. And then that was basically it. That led to like a 10-year cycle, back and forth through recovery and relapsing. And as a kid, I guess I just kind of decided at maybe like 10 years old that I was going to definitely drink and do drugs, because I was like, well, it must be fun, because he's gone for 3 and 4 days at a time. So it must be better than, having your family. It's got to be the best thing ever. So I'd like, in the back of my head was like already decided I was going to try. And I didn't realize until I was probably almost 30 years old, 28 years old, how traumatic that whole situation actually was, because we didn't talk about it. We didn't go to counseling. We didn't go to therapy. It was kind of like, and because my dad never used drugs at home, it was always this like thing, this shameful thing where he would disappear, you know, for a few days at a time and come back. And then maybe that would happen a few weeks in a row. Then he'd be back for 3 months straight and you know, so now I understand what that was, you know, that was the struggle, like trying to stay clean. And we talk about it now. And I guess I'll take, you know, and I will say that I'm the kid that was like, let's talk about this. Like, it's been 25 years, you guys. And now that we're adults, those situations are starting to come up in our lives as personality things that we never faced. You know what I'm saying? Anxieties that we never realized, like, oh, well, my first therapist was like, so your mom was a single parent for a while. And I was like, no, my parents have been together since they're 15. She was never. And she said, well, you said your dad was in rehab. And I was like, yeah. And then literally at 30 years old, I was like, oh my God, wait, yeah. So, you know, he was gone for maybe 30 days at a time. So yeah, she was by herself with all her kids, maybe 3 different times, you know, so little things that we just, if you don't talk about it, later on in life, you're going to have to deal with it in a different way versus like if it had been handled right then and there. And now we're building healthier relationships. We kind of like skated on the surface for 20 years and had feelings that we all suppressed for the longest time instead of just facing them. And when I was in my early recovery, I was on that high horse, you know, for a little while. And I went to my dad and I'm like, Dad, you didn't do these 12 steps. I don't remember you know, writing me a letter and you didn't do it this way. And he kind of just was like, you know, you'll get it, you know, like I apologize, but also like, you'll understand, you know, I'm not going to tell you to stop doing your program that you're doing. However, you'll see later on that you might, you know, things might change. You might find something different. You might find a different path, but I'm not going to knock you for what you're doing, but also, you know, pump the brakes a little bit. Like, I'm sorry I didn't do it your way, but, you know, I'm here right now and I'm sober. So, but yeah, that was, it was tough. And now I'm able to understand like how much substance abuse affects not just the person, but their partner, their kids, if they have kids, their whole family. There's stuff that I'm just now learning about. Like, what? Dad, you stole money from my grandmother? Oh my God. Like, that is crazy. You know, but an 8-year-old kid doesn't need to know all that's going on.
No, I love, and I've had a few of these too, where you have these epiphanies about you know, you hear the phrase, the tapes that are playing in your head, you know, or the thoughts that we have, the way we think about life, the way we think about our life. And then those moments that come, you know, that came for me in recovery and sobriety and going, oh my gosh, it wasn't like that at all. I thought it was like that for 38 years and it wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay. And, you know, I think it's great because it gives us a little, or at least it gave me a little bit of empathy and was able to find a little bit of forgiveness to people, you know, in my family, you know, and to understand that they were human beings dealing with these struggles too. And they weren't just mad at me for being a kid.
They weren't mad at you, and they weren't, I mean, each person is different, but for me, looking at my dad and finally talking about it, I understand, like, so he was a football coach. And I used to hate that. Like when he had gotten what I understood was like completely sober and finally was like on the path, he dove into coaching, he dove into church, he dove into fitness, he dove into all these things. And I'm like, why can't you just hang out with us? You know, for him, that was keeping him sober. And the other crazy thing and he said this, and then I felt really not bad, but like, oh, okay, man, I get it. He was like, I just figured you guys hated me. You know, I figured I had already, you're 11, 12 years old by the time I finally stopped. And I figured that you guys didn't want to have anything to do with me. I had already let you down so many times that let me just stay away, stay busy with all these other things and use these other, coaching kids, mentoring, going to church, exercising to keep myself sane. And it wasn't that he didn't want to have a relationship. He didn't know how. He thought it was already too broken. And because I have 3 sisters and a brother. So he's like, my 4 daughters have probably written me off. And my older sister did. I mean, she definitely did. But learning that as an adult and thinking like, oh, okay, so it wasn't like you said, it wasn't that you didn't like me or you were mad at me. You actually were ashamed. You just figured, it was a lost cause. And yeah, now I'm like, oh, that's what was going on. Okay. So that's one of the greatest things about like therapy and recovery and doing the extra work besides just staying off of your substance is that you do get to go back, and sometimes it's not pretty and doesn't feel good, but you get to. And I say that like it's recovery. I think it is a privilege, to be able to sit down and do that work on yourself and really understand what really happened, whether it was with you and your parents and their substance abuse or what you were doing to people in your situation. Cause I was definitely a real rude biatch.
So as a young person, when do you said you first had your first drink around 14 or 15? Was it an off to the races kind of thing, or did it take you some time to develop?
Yeah, it was. I definitely remember thinking like, oh, yes, this is like, I can do this. However, my parents were super strict and I was like raised in the church. I knew what my dad had gone through and I didn't have enough access. And also I was like afraid of my parents. So I couldn't really, I wasn't off to the races then because I didn't have the freedom to do so. But once I got to college, then looking back now, I realized that, yeah, like if alcohol was available, then I was drinking. And I didn't realize that it was an issue until probably like 2008. So I graduated high school 2000. I'm 38. And so from 15 until 17 or 18, right after high school, I changed schools and met a group of girls that was kind of like the party girls. And they, whenever I could drink with them, I drank with them. Wasn't like drinking at school or anything like that. But I also had this thing where, and I carried that on through all the way through. I have a master's degree. I have multiple nutrition and fitness certifications. And I was able to do all that while abusing alcohol, bartending, partying, being wild and crazy. So like in high school, I could drink and do this and that. And I still had A's. So it was like, I had this little secret life going on, but it didn't start being, for me, realizing that this was like, okay, this is not a really good cycle until I started bartending and having access to alcohol. And it's a lifestyle, like obviously it's like never trust a skinny chef, like that whole mindset, like what bartender doesn't drink, you know what I mean? And if you don't, like, not only do you drink, but like you drink everything because you're gonna taste all the, So that's when I remember waking up in 2008, right after I graduated. And I woke up at like 8 a.m. and had missed my whole mornings of session, my whole morning worth. So I had a 5 a.m. client, a 6 a.m., a 7 a.m., 3 personal training clients, missed them completely, just passed out drunk. And I called my boyfriend at the time and I was like, I don't want to be this person. Like I was crying, like what the hell, like what happened? Like how did this is my first job as a personal trainer and I missed all 3 of my appointments because I was blacked out, passed out. No, I don't want to be this person. Didn't stop right then, I probably maybe went a few days or whatever it was without drinking. And then for me, it wasn't until 2015, I got a DUI in May of 2015. And that was my first like real reality check. Like, girl, you just got arrested. You drove your car off the freeway. Could have killed someone, could have killed yourself. Like, what the is going on? And the court requires you to go to AA. They require you to go to all these classes and this and that. And the insane person in me was like, I don't need AA. I'll go to the classes because I have to go to those and pay for them. They have to get signed off. But AA it's anonymous. This is me thinking like, no one, I went to one meeting and then I just copied the rest of the signatures. Cause I was like, what are they going to do? Call AA. There's no number. There's no, you know what I'm saying? So I just wasn't ready to really, I knew that I was not having a good relationship with alcohol, but I didn't know at that time that about recovery. I just knew about sobriety, like don't drink and that's it. But I had no tools. I didn't have any, like, why did I start drinking and why is drinking feel so good? I didn't have any of that stuff. So it took me a while, you know, to get it.
I think too, I was a bartender for about 12, 13 years. I know worked in bars much longer than that, but being behind the bar. And so I think there's this thing that happens where it's not normal, the life of a bartender. It's not healthy and it's not normal. And I know some people who have been successful at it and have been very focused and disciplined and can make money and not get caught into the traps of alcohol abuse and drug abuse and everything else that comes with it. But, you know, everything is just seen as okay. You know, you have a drink before work, you have, you know, you're not off until 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So you're up drinking at like 6, 7, 8 a.m. And so, you know, I think that really, for me at least, and maybe you too, it accelerates the process.
Oh yeah. I don't, if I hadn't become a bartender, which was again, like one of those things looking back at myself, like, I'm a smart girl. Like okay. So what I did was I saw the thing that I liked and then I found a way to make money doing that thing that I liked and just be in it all the time. And then it was okay because I'm a bartender. Like you said, I used to have this sticker on my tip jar that said bartender life, living single, drinking double, and sleeping triple or something like that. That was what it, but yeah, it's true. You get off at 3, you're like amped up or whatever. And who knows what you were doing behind the bar. Like it does make it okay. And that's one reason I tried a few years after I stopped drinking the first time. It didn't last. And I say it didn't last after the DUI. You would think that the DUI would be enough, but it didn't last because I didn't have those tools. And I convinced myself like, okay, I didn't drink for 8 months. Like, I'm cool. This is fine. I understand. I just can't drink that much anymore. I can't do it that much. And I'll only drink beer, I'll only drink wine. I won't take shots unless it's someone's birthday. Then I will take shots, but I'll only take 3 shots. Like, it's all these agreements you have. And they just never work. For me, they just never worked. I went back after 2015. So probably by December of 2015, or maybe the year after that, I was already back to drinking. And that was almost 3 more years before I was like, no, this is not working. Like, I am fighting with people. I am angry. I can't, keep healthy family relationships. I'm on edge all the time. I got to the point where I noticed, and this is something I still am aware of, when I would open any can, now I drink a lot of LaCroix, but when I open the can, that sound reminds me of, I used to drink Lime-A-Ritas, and when I opened a drink and felt that salivating, that was when I was like, this is not what is happening to me right now? Like, I can't believe I'm so excited about having this Lime-A-Rita. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So after a few months of that and just understanding, and the stubborn person in me is the one that was like, all right, this is June of 2018. I'm going to drink until December 31st. And then I'm going to because I want my sobriety date to be January 1st. And then that way I'll know every year. And I mean, I did that, and that is actually my date, but it's just silly, when it's we make these agreements with ourselves just to give myself 6 more months to poison myself.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, it's insane. I know the big book talks about that. There's an insanity to it, and either way, I walked into a room on January 1st and haven't looked back since then. So at least part of the insanity got me into the room because I made the agreement with myself.
And so you technically created this plan that included 6 months of drinking
Mhm.
miserable relationships, hangovers, missed appointments, and all those things. You were like,
Yeah.
well, and I mean,
Yeah.
but you made a plan, and
Yeah.
I think that that's an important point. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know that I don't know many people who would have made that plan. So I mean, there's something to be said about, your stick to itiveness,
Yeah. It's like a stubbornness.
Hmm.
I'm very hard-headed. My dad will always say that. Um, but I get it done. Like when I do make an agreement, then the problem when I was drinking was that then I would change them. It was like, oh, I'm only going to drink beer and wine, and I would do that. And then I'd be like, then I'm only going to take shots, and I would do that. And then it was just like, now, okay, I'm only going to do all these things on these days. But still, that means on those 3 or 4 days, the effects linger during the week on your attitude and your energy.
Yeah.
And because then you're like craving the drink and you're like, no, I gotta wait until Thursday. So then you're just on edge, and I would keep them, but they were silly, not like they didn't make any sense, things. But it got me to just finally like decide. I'm just the kind of person that once I decide something, I definitely go for it. I'm very open. And that was one of my not struggles, but one of the reasons that I've kind of ventured into different things, into Sober Black Girls Club and Served Up Sober, and just the whole social media space. We're being very vocal about my recovery, is that if I had to stay anonymous, I knew I was going to be breaking a tradition by like talking about it. And but that's just who I am. Like I'm the kind of person where when it comes to like the family trauma stuff, it's so important for me to be open about that. And it's brought my family together because now no one is ashamed. Like I'm telling my dad, listen, you're a 62-year-old Black male who survived the crack epidemic. Like you survived it. You're still married to your same wife. Your kids are all alive there. And you're like, you need to talk about this because there's someone out there who maybe didn't or is still struggling, or they chose to cut their dad out of their life and he's still alive, but he just doesn't have that relationship. And maybe he's clean now and they don't even know, what he went through. And we just don't talk about that stuff enough, especially in the minority community and the Black community. It's like, you don't go to therapy, you go to church, you talk to God about it. And it's like, that's all fine and dandy, but therapy is different. Like church can be therapeutic, but actually the process of therapy with a licensed professional is it's a safer space. There's no shaming. So I want to be open about it. I want to talk about it. I want to share about it. I want people to see that, yes, I have an education and I did all these things on paper academically, but I was struggling. And people tell me like, I would have never known. And I'm like, that's the point, you guys. I wasn't drinking so you would know that I was drinking. I was drinking for me.
Yeah.
And then showing up at the gym like, hey, everybody, let's have the best lives ever. And meanwhile, I'm like, pounding drinks after work, whatever it is. So I just want to, I feel like the more open I am, the more I can heal and people can see like alcoholism, substance abuse. It doesn't just look like homeless people. It doesn't just look like brown paper bag drinking and no job and this and that. There are high power people that are struggling, out there. They've got it down to a system. They have their little boxes and they know put their tie on and show up for
And
work and they have all their,
and those systems can be exhausting. Those systems, I know somebody, a friend of mine, and he had all these systems, and it was long before he was basically, a dry drunk. He just quit drinking, and he said, I did it for 5 years. And you know what? I hated every single day of it. It wasn't until I got into a program recovery that I started to enjoy myself. And so
yeah.
he did it he was sober out of spite for 5 years. And he just
Yeah.
hated it. And so I understand those systems that are just that you're like, well, this is what I do and this is how I'm going to do it and everything. Well, as long as I do this, then I am fine. And you don't need to tell me that I have a problem. Right. And
Yep.
so what was different about the first time and the last time that you got sober? What was in the decision-making process, whether it be in June or when January came around? And this is January 2018, 19.
Yeah.
18.
Well,
18.
2019 January is when I walked into a room. 2018 June is when I was like had made that 6-month contract.
Right. So what was different this time? What did you see differently?
Well, it was a decision that I made. Okay. So in 2015, May, when I got a DUI, that was like that was the wake up call,
Mm.
but I didn't decide for that to happen. I thought I was going to drive home, from the birthday party at 3 a.m. with the 0.15 BAC level. I thought I'm going to go home and then I'm just going to, go to sleep and whatever. I'm just going to keep, it wasn't a decision I made. So when I decided like this is not working for me, my life is no longer in control. Like I own a fitness studio and I have a car and I'm engaged, but all of those things were not healthy. They were not functioning. Like, the studio was struggling and I was barely paying my car note and I was in a toxic relationship. That's what people didn't know was actually happening. And I just decided like, this is not for me. I deserve better. And I think making the choice yourself is one of the things that makes it different. If you're like, I'm going to do this for my kids, for my boyfriend, for my whatever, it may or may not work, but if you choose it for yourself, there's a good chance that it's going to work. And then the biggest thing was having the community around me, like walking into that room and seeing, for me, I was in South LA. So I walked into a room which felt like being back at like church, but in a good way, not the other stuff that I don't like about church. It was like, older people and like the aunties and the uncles and just these smiling faces and like, welcome. And we're so glad you came. And then hearing the stories, like, if you've ever been to a meeting, it's like a common thing. I think people say like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Somebody says something where you're like, have you been following me? Are you just saying this because like my family set this up or something? And realizing that it wasn't just me, that there's hundreds of maybe thousands of people that have had experiences just like mine. And then having just a complete stranger willing to sit with me for 20 or 30 minutes at a time to take me through the steps, like all of that stuff, that's what made it different. I was open to like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I have nothing to lose. Literally at that time, I had lost my car, broken up with my fiance, broken up with my business partner, separated that and was just like, I can't do this anymore. Had to move home at 37 years old. And yeah, I had nothing to lose versus the stubborn girl who was like in the process of opening a studio and finishing grad school and things were happening positively for me, but I had this, drinking thing going on. So humility, that played a big part in it.
Yeah.
I was finally humble enough to be like, yeah, if I don't do this, then it's just not, this picture is not going to look good anymore.
Yeah.
Or it's going to look worse because the picture was already looking bad, but.
And then you mentioned too about being vocal versus being anonymous. And, it's something that I struggled with when we started this podcast, when my buddy and I started this podcast, and like, what do we talk about? What can we talk about? What's right? What's wrong? And I think ultimately, the notion that I got was it's better to talk about it than not. It
Yeah.
makes me feel better. I feel like I get something out of it for him and for people who listen. So I'm just wondering, you saw that, AA being one type of recovery and then reaching out and finding others.
Yeah. So the crazy thing is, I actually was inspired to come or to go to my first meeting because a friend from high school posted his chip, I think maybe 2 year or somewhere along there. I know it was past 6 months. It was like 1 or 2 years. He posted it on Instagram, a picture of it. And I was like, oh, not him. Like, no way. Like, he was the star of this team and he was the prom king and Mr. Apple Valley High School. Like, he went to AA and he's posting about it. What? Like, okay, maybe I can do it. And I didn't even realize or learn then that for some, that's like completely breaking against everything, every tradition. I remember when I posted my first chip, my 24-hour one-day chip, somebody who I didn't even know and was following me for probably fitness, nutrition stuff, messaged me and was like, that's completely against your traditions and you shouldn't do that. We're not supposed to talk about it. Da, da, da. And I was like, listen, lady, God bless you, but I have to do this. Like, I have to do this. And I don't think, like, for me, if this is going to ruin my whole recovery, it's a risk I'm willing to take, because what if someone else, just like I saw that guy's, sees this and then they go, and here I am a year and a half later and I'm still on the path. I think it's tough because it's like traditions are, I don't know, they're not meant to be broken. This is a new generation though. And like this generation, people younger than me, again, I'm 38. So 28-year-olds, they live on social media. Their life is show what you're doing, talk about what you're doing, show everyone what you're doing, take pictures of your food, take pictures of every move you make, yourself, brushing your teeth, everything you're doing. So, and because drugs and alcohol are like just blown up more than ever before, I feel like, how can we not talk about the alternative lifestyle to that? Like, I feel like we have to put it out there. And there's groups I go to where, it's not debated, but people are like, we're not supposed to do that. And I just say, okay, in the groups that I can talk about it and be open, then I do. If I do go to a traditional AA meeting, I don't make a big deal about, well, I post everybody. So it's like, there's no reason to do that. Now, again, if I had been drinking of course I would be in there debating and talking shit to everybody. But I've learned now, like, there's no reason to do that. It's like, if you're going to the Baptist church, if you're going to visit, then follow their way. If you're going to go visit this other, then follow their way. When you're in there, follow their way. And then when you're outside of there, maybe you take a little bit of both and present it your one way. But so far, since that one time, I haven't had any messages or comments back. And especially since the pandemic, AA has had to be moved to virtual.
Yeah.
It's had to be for a lot of people, for them to be alive. There's a lot of people that rely on meetings to stay sober. And if there is no meeting, then they feel, it's going to be a huge struggle. And once I started seeing that, I guess it made me feel a little bit, like, okay, I'm not like the worst person ever. But also, I consider myself a part of both worlds. I'm not like a hardcore 12-stepper. However, if someone asks me how I got sober, that is how I got sober. Doing those 12 steps, how I recovered. Like, if I hadn't done those, I don't know. I probably would be drinking again, because I only know what I did last time was stop for 8 months and then, drink again.
Yeah. I mean, I try to be, I'm always respectful of somebody else's sobriety and recovery and all that stuff. And their anonymity is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it's and I've always found, in the beginning, I was not interested in inspiring anyone. I was just trying to, save my own ass. Right.
Right.
But when you see those things, when those things come into your life and you say, oh, that person can do that, then maybe it's important that I share this. And I think that that's definitely something that I have found as well, is that these people need to know that there's a way out. Because I don't know how you felt when you were drinking, but when I was drinking, it never occurred to me that I could quit. It wasn't even an option that, like, I could live without alcohol, especially in that bartender lifestyle.
Right.
I
didn't, I guess, the same. I can remember, that first time waking up and missing a bunch of appointments, thinking like, I don't want to do this. Like, why, what is this? Why is this happening to me? That was the first time I had missed something that was significant enough for me to think like, I cannot believe that due to drinking, I missed work. Like, what? This is crazy. And I have another journal that I remember I wrote in 2009, that the first entry is like 2009 goals: stop drinking, stop smoking, and stop cussing. I think is what it was in there. Those were my 3 things in 2009. And again, so what, 6 more years went on before I probably had little stints here and there, but I never really thought of it as like a all or nothing. I think I only thought like you could cut back. I didn't really think like you could actually like not drink forever. Like I was,
Right.
no, like who does that? But
Yeah.
necessary.
So you are super, and maybe you can explain, you were very much into health and fitness, and you have some, you know what you're talking about. So and I have it written down here, but I imagine that you can precision nutrition certified coach.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about all of this is because in early sobriety, in early recovery, in every single room I've ever been in, there's nothing but cake, candies, cookies, coffee with lots of
Coffee
sugar, which I still drink a lot of coffee, but and I
and
also think
cigarettes.
yes, let's not forget the cigarettes, but the sugar is the big thing that and also the lack of exercise, I find either, but I think it's important in early recovery to do whatever you need to do to stay sober, even if that
Yeah.
means candy, cookie, sugar, not moving, whatever it is. But
Right.
at a certain point, we need to start taking our health seriously if we've quit drinking. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, is the idea of the importance of health in sobriety.
Yeah, definitely. So my background, my bachelor's is in kinesiology, which is the study of human movement. My master's is in exercise psychology, which takes the mental side of sticking to something. It's exercise and sports psychology. So using visualization and mindset training to keep people on their routines, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I studied, all while drinking and bartending. I like paid for college with bartending. So it's kind of ironic because I'm like studying health and fitness and like boozing and using on the weekends. So an interview I did once, it was, someone brought it to my attention. They're like, you've always wanted to help people. It's ironic because you've always wanted to help people, but then you had this thing where you had to learn how to help yourself first. And now I can actually help people. And it's transitioned a bit, or it's opened up. I've started to realize like, this is like the sober community needs this stuff, like not just the average person. Like I can use this for my community. So in the beginning, the sugar craving part is because alcohol gets metabolized as either sugar or fat in the body. And so when we cut alcohol out, then your body's like, hello, where's sugar? We were also getting a huge dopamine release when we drank as well. And sugar can do that for you too. So your brain and your body are super intelligent. No matter how many drugs and alcohol you've done, the brain is still going and asking for, give me that thing. So that's one of the reasons we crave sugar in early sobriety, is because our body is now like, I need you're going to just cut off alcohol. You didn't even like wean me off. You drank on that Thursday and now you're in AA and you quit drinking. What the hell? So what I say in my suggestion, and this is even with just a client who is coming in, not a substance user, be easy on yourself, but it's important to know the why first. Once you know, then you can say like, oh, that's why the room's full of cakes and cookies and all these things, because somebody brought that in because they were craving it, and they're sharing it, maybe knowing everyone's craving it, or it's an old timer who's like, listen, you're 30 days in, eat them jelly beans, girl, because that's what's gonna, and I totally agree with you that your first, maybe even your first 90 days, that is not the time to say like, I'm going to quit drinking, I'm going to become vegan, I'm joining a gym, I'm going to start meditating, I'm going to do all this stuff. Like, no, you're not you're going to stay sober. That's what you're going to do. And then after 90 days or 60 days, maybe you start adding little things in here and there. But because we have been doing, or had been doing, so much damage to liver, kidneys, the brain, respiratory system, depending on what you were doing, it's important to gradually start building a health and fitness routine so we can recover all of that. Start with the mind, recover the mind first, and breaking the addiction or stepping away from your substance, and then start with one or the other. I say pick fitness or nutrition. So I have Precision is my nutrition certification, and my fitness personal training is through National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I have both of those in my background. And I think when this first started to click for me was, again, ironically enough, I was teaching a fitness class for, I guess it was kind of like a halfway house program. And I realized, looking at their diet, I'm like, what did you eat? And they're like, oh, chili dogs, French fries, hot Cheetos, soda, whatever. And I'm like, how is that what they're feeding you guys? You know, like, this doesn't even make any sense. And they said, well, we get to eat whatever we want. And yeah, your body is, that junk food gives you that quick little, you know, all the chemicals in the junk food give you that quick dopamine rush or whatever it is. And it was then that I thought, you know, okay, there's no way that you're going to be able to stay sober and do the recovery process for a long period of time if you keep eating like that and you stop exercising or whatever it is. Something's going to have to come in, because otherwise you're going to end up with diabetes. You're going to end up with high blood pressure. You're going to end up with some other ailment. And after doing all this work and sobriety and recovery, like, that's the last thing you want, is another problem. You know, this is like, we finally have like access to happiness. You don't want to be like, now you have to take all these pills for whatever, diabetes. So in the last 6 months or so, I just started working on, you know, really finding ways to bring this stuff into the recovery and sobriety world without it being overwhelming, because more often than not, our personalities are, you know, substance users or substance abusers. We have that like perfectionist, overthinker, overanalyzer, you know, worried about
check.
You know, that's our personality. So the last thing I want to do is be like, okay, we're going to start a boot camp program. We're going vegan and we're meditating for 30 minutes a day. What it really is helping people understand the why. You know, why is it that meditation could help you? Why are you craving sugar? Why will exercising for 30 minutes a day possibly help you stay sober that day? That kind of stuff, versus here's your routine, follow this program. There's no one size fits all. So when I work with someone, when it comes to nutrition, I don't have any two people I've ever worked with now that have the same exact program. And I say that because years ago, I did used to hand out meal plans, like, eat this, 9 a.m., eat your hard-boiled eggs, and eat oatmeal. I don't do that anymore. And that's just from, you know, experience, new certifications. But it will help you, because we need routines. That is in recovery, we have to have a schedule. Or it's very helpful when we have a schedule. So if your thing is, you know, get up and do whatever your spiritual thing is, awesome. And you do that for 30 days. Then the next 30 days, do your spiritual thing, and then add in drinking, you know, 64 ounces of water a day. You do that for 30 days. And then the next 30 days, now you have your spiritual thing going. You've got your water going. Now we're going to add in a 15-minute walk, and breaking it down like that 30 days at a time. That is much more realistic for us to stick to. Really anyone, but for us in this recovery experience, to add little things, and not, because we're already cutting out a huge part of our routine, our substance. So then instead of me saying that now cut out, you know, cut out cakes, cut out soda, cut out pizza, cut out all the other stuff you love, and just, you know, go cold turkey on everything, it's not going to last. But when we start to gradually add in new positive behaviors, it makes recovery more enjoyable. You really, you get to do all the things that you wanted to do before, but either you were too buzzed or high or whatever to actually stick to the routine. So we get to gradually build the life that we have been wanting, you know, this entire time.
It's just so, it's become apparent to me in my life how vital the exercise part and nutrition has become. And I still struggle, and I've been trying to get more flexible, and I tried a little too hard. And so I pulled something in my back last week, and I was out of work for 2 days, and then it still hurts. And so I've also, you know, I ran a half marathon last year, and I started running, and I lost like 80 pounds in a matter of like 13, 14 months, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so it became very clear from, you know, running and eating better, I was like, oh my God, this is so much better. And I realized just in the last week that I haven't been running, and the smoke in Northern California has not been great either
Yeah.
for that. Thankfully, it's just smoke where I'm at. But um, and again, with recovery, early recovery, like with, and I think about it in early fitness, I want to tell everybody, I want to be like, hey, don't you understand? You got to get out there and exercise. You got to quit eating trash.
Yeah.
And then I go, hang on a second, John, this is not how you came upon it. Nobody forced it down your throat.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something that I love to hear and talk about and have conversations about, because it makes, and you said it beautifully, we finally have this access to happiness.
Yeah.
We don't want to throw it away
Mm-hmm.
because of other bad habits that, oh, just because I'm not drinking, then everything else is acceptable, at least
Right.
in the long term,
In the
right?
long term. Yeah, that's true. In the beginning, you eat them cookies and jelly beans, you smoke a pack of cigarettes, you do whatever you have to do, but just know like this is temporary. This is a
Right.
temporary thing. And I say it like I think of myself as a 1.5-year old. This is my new life. I'm 1.5 years old. And when babies are babies, they wear diapers, they get to do whatever they want. Toddlers get to throw toys everywhere and be wild and crazy. We have to give ourselves like that grace to grow,
Mhm.
knowing that then there's gonna be a point, okay, like you're 3 years old now, little Tommy, it's time to start learning how to do this. You can't be 5 years old and not potty trained, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like give yourself room, but also and be open to growing and adding things in, but do not expect that this is the first 30, 60, or even 90 days is the time to start a whole entire new program. You already
Mhm.
started a new program. It's called recovery, so stick
Yeah.
to that. This is not the time to, and I mean, listen, there are some people out there who maybe that is just their personality and they are going to just go gung-ho on everything. They're going to quit everything and start all these new things. That's great. On average,
Right.
as far as sticking to it, we need to take small bites of things. So, and that's one of the reasons I gave the pointers, where it's not about never having dessert or never having those things. Maybe if, let's say you go to meetings 3 times a week. If you go to meetings 3 times a week and they're going to have cupcakes, or Miss, whoever, Sister so-and-so is always bringing that, coffee cake, then on those days I have a slice of it just as a part of, that's just part of my fellowship. I go, I talk to these, men and women, I have a cup of coffee and I have a slice of coffee cake. And that's what I do on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. On Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, I choose not to have the desserts, so that you're
Mhm.
not like, I can't ever have it. I can never, little, substitutions like that. Or another one of the tips was just be open to like making the stuff yourself. If you're craving a cupcake, forget about Hostess and Twinkie, like go down to Sprinkles and just buy one cupcake and maybe, cut it into 4, little stuff like that. That's how we can stick with those things and not feeling like I have to start insanity. I have to start this like 90 minutes hardcore hit interval. Why don't you start with a 15-minute walk? Like, let's do that. Do that for 3 weeks straight and then add on 5 minutes, or, making it digestible. It's just easier for us, but still putting it into your routine. That's how we're
And
going to stick with
yeah,
it.
and that idea of routine, that I think for me, I had so many routines when I was drinking and I just didn't know it. And so all of a sudden this idea of like, what do you mean I have to get an exercise routine, and I have to meditate, and I have to journal, and there has to be these routines. And I remember going to a re- a refuge recovery, which is a Buddhist meeting,
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist centric recovery. And I came home and I told my girlfriend, and I said, I don't know how these people stay sober. There's just no structure there. And she's like, John, you're the one that needs the structure, not them, And there I was, like, judging them on
Right.
what I required. And so knowing that as an alcoholic, for me, and
Mm-hmm.
as when I was actively drinking, I had these routines. I still need them in sobriety. And
Yeah.
so it's crucial, right, to find things that you will do every single day that are
Yeah.
helpful.
that are helpful, that are healthy, and that also so there's a neurologist that I talked to a couple times, and he explained it as we need to replace that dopamine. Our body's going to be looking for it. So things like meditating will help replace the dopamine. Exercising is going to help replace what we were missing. And when we see it that way, where it's like, listen, you're cutting out this huge rush you used to get, and at first you might feel very down and very confused. And there's so many memes about like early sobriety. How many days did you spend crying in the shower? How much time did you spend in the showering? How much time were you in there crying? Like, you're taking a huge part of your life and your routines. Yeah, it's, some people's thing was go to work, go to happy hour, and whatever it was, you had that all set. So we are trying to find ways to just replace. It's just changing. I'm taking out happy hour, I'm putting in Zumba or whatever it is. I'm taking out this and I'm putting in eating a healthy breakfast. I'm taking out this one thing, I'm putting in going to a meeting or fellowshipping with other sober people. And you take them out, you're just taking it out and putting something in that's going to be a positive thing. Also, though, staying mindful that we don't take that new thing and treat it like alcohol, because that's, you can exercise, you can be a crazy exerciser, you can start being obsessed with food. And that's one of the reasons that when it comes to nutrition, I want it to be little by little by little, so it doesn't turn into this big obsession, because now we're back to square one.
Yeah, I'm currently dealing with that with almonds and cashews has become my new, I'm eating them alcoholically, as I like to say. And so I'm like, okay, John, let's think about this. What are you doing? And I'll catch myself just like grabbing them off the shelf, or, well, I got to go to the store and I got to buy, I need more nuts. Well, I guess I can't just go to the store and buy a bag of nuts. So I'll buy a bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, John, this is how you used to buy. Well, it's how I used to buy ice cream when I was first sober.
Yeah.
And now it's like, that's how you used to buy booze. So,
Yeah.
so being aware of it for me is definitely like, okay, so just find something else, and maybe not every day, and maybe not all the time. And
exactly. It's hard with food because we have to eat. We have to eat to live. That's one of the things someone asked me, like, well, is sugar really, can you really be addicted to sugar? Because sugar is in fruit. So how can we, so that is a little, it's a tricky kind of a thing, but it's exactly what you said. It's being mindful. It's like, when you're like, literally, am I going to eat 100 almonds a day? Like, is that what I'm doing? Or do I need, so that's that's everything. Mindfulness is everything. And for us, again, I using the like terminology and the words, like, we get to do these things. A lot of people take it for granted that they don't have to have the routines that we have, or they have it and they don't even realize like how lucky and how beneficial it is to have a set routine. And I think in sobriety and recovery, when we look at it that way, like, this is not a punishment. This is a decision that we made to have this lifestyle. Any of us could decide to say, like, forget it. I don't want this anymore. So it's a conscious decision to stay recovering every single day. And it's a gift, that's how I see it. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm so crazy about like shouting from the rooftops, like, give this to yourself, everybody, believe me.
And if somebody gave you a gift, if you give yourself a gift, you want to take care of that gift, right? You want to take care of that sobriety and be healthy in it. And
exactly.
So I have a couple questions before we end here. Well, thank you. I'm wondering, is there anything that you struggle with still today in your recovery and sobriety, in health and fitness?
No, I don't struggle. My life is perfect. I have no struggles. Yeah, my biggest struggle is still the overthinking, taking things personal girl. That thinks that if you say something that I then need to defend myself, and that's like my biggest character defect is overanalyzing what someone said or what someone did and thinking that it's an attack on me. So I have to learn I'm still learning how to just listen to what people said and not start making my whole own story behind it of like, well, they might have said that, but I think what they really meant was, and it's like, no, they meant what they said. So yeah, that is
okay. Yeah. I think we all a lot of us deal with that too. It's tough. Is there any other, like, one simple small piece of advice you might give to people who are early in sobriety and wanting to kick other habits or change the way that they're living or eating or moving?
Mm-hmm. So in early sobriety, I would say to just pick one thing maybe every 30 days, right? So we
Right.
know it's not drinking. That's the long-term thing. You're going to be not drinking, for the long term. But just pick one and see if you can stick with that for 30 days. So if it's journaling, then start with that. And then once you get through your 30 days of journaling, then in the next 30 days, you keep journaling. And now maybe you add in a yoga class and do that for 30 days. And then now you've got the yoga and the journaling going in the next. So now you're at 90, you're finished with 60 days of sobriety. Now you're going into your 90 days. Now you add in the healthy eating. So that might be adding in more vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, the next month, you've got your journaling, you're doing yoga, you're eating more vegetables. In month number 4, now you're adding in drinking more water. So now you've got one by one, instead of, all right, I'm going to do this whole overhaul. So that's my best advice, is one thing at a time. Yeah. It's like the one day at a time thing. Choose one new healthy habit to add in for 30 days and keep that habit going for 30 days, master that, and then add in something else new, little by little by little. And that's
great.
The best way to stick with it. Be easy on yourself. You have to.
Yeah.
We were so hard on ourselves for so many years. That's all we were, was hard on ourselves. We thought we were doing ourselves a favor, drinking and but no, we were not. So now we finally get to be easy on ourselves.
Yeah, it's really that's another thing that I struggle with, is the be easy on yourself, John, and which is not to say that I'm going to accept my own bullshit either. So right. I always have to make that distinction of, like, okay, well, are you going to be easy on yourself, or are you making excuses for yourself, John?
Yeah.
And so it's that's always a thing where I'm like, is this an excuse, or are you being kind?
Right. Yeah, give yourself grace and space, and not. That's very good. Definitely need to acknowledge that, because then, we can fall into. We just fall into, like you said, our own bullshit, where we're like, oh no, it's okay, and it's like, no, it's not okay. You need to keep doing it. Stay on the path, but don't, just don't give yourself such a hard time with these big expectations of, things, and give yourself a little grace. So cool. This is awesome.
Yes, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they would like to contact you for further information?
Yes. Okay, so you can, on Instagram, I'm at Kiola Raines, KIOLA RAINES. I'm sure that'll be somewhere here in the podcast notes.
Yes.
And then my website is just the same thing. It's my first name, KiolaRaines.com, KIOLA RAINES.com. And you can DM me or send me a message there. And I love what I do. I'm a huge geek for just nutrition. It's being able to share my passion. It's amazing, especially in the recovery world. Like, I never thought that I was going to be talking about nutrition and fitness and recovery. Never would have thought that. And it's like, it all makes sense now. Okay. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm glad you are. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you again, perhaps about nutrition and fitness.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.